Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. This is Kelsey checking in today with Sasha Froyland. He's the president at Help4Access. Super excited to have him on the show today.
Thank you, Kelsey. It's great to be here.
So Sasha, you're the president at Help4Access. Tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, sure. Well, Kelsey, I started Help4Access after working in the industry for about 20 years. I recognized that there was an underserved set of clients, small, mid-sized businesses that had leveraged Microsoft Access heavily in their companies, but didn't have a really good source of professional services for it. And so I started Help4Access full-time back in 2006, and we've been building our business ever since.
Very nice, very nice. So what would you say the different industries that you serve are?
We service all industries, but what I'd say primarily underserved industries, such as nonprofits. They're one of the most underserved industries there are. But then also like manufacturing and healthcare, any industry that has a lot of change. We're very Microsoft Access is a very easy tool to use. So everybody has it, from Ford Motor Company to NASA is using it for managing their data. But the projects are often built kind of shadow IT outside of standard IT, and so they run into trouble, and that's where we come in and help them with those most challenging, the most complex access database applications that ever have been invented.
Okay, break that down a little more for me. So what does that look like?
Well, which part, the what we do for them, or what it looks like from their side?
Both.
Okay, so typical situation is where a business owner, a thought leader in a business area, has something they want to automate, or a new service or a new product they want to bring about, and say in a large organization like DuPont, it would cost them, $500,000 to build it into their ERP system, and they don't know if it's going to work or not. So somebody else on the team, Microsoft Access is installed on everybody's PC often, and so they'll just open it up and start putting some spreadsheets in there, and then the service takes off, and they're like, wow, we do want to sell these kind of specialized services, or build this kind of specialized healthcare hearing device or something. And then they grows from 1 or 2 people, and next thing there's 20 people using the system, and now it's become critical to their business, but no one specializes in supporting it, and maybe one person was a developer and they got sick of it and left. And so then the IT, then the business person will throw it over to IT and say, hey, we need you to support it. And guess what? It's not in their standard toolbox to support Microsoft Access. So then they receive an email from me, hopefully, or somebody reach out to us, and then we will go in and assess the complexity of the application, come up with build a roadmap for supporting them, and include certain modernizations and best practices that if we would written the application from scratch, we would have developed from day one. And so we kind of have to go back and do that analysis, and then build them a plan of how to put pieces of that in place going forward.
Okay. So what would you I'm I'm just talking, thinking through it. And it sounds like there's a lot of different ways that you folks can approach, support, both whether it be intensive or, in a different way. Is Microsoft the only platform that you folks use to interface with customers or support?
It's pretty much the base, the starting spot. If a client has, that's where they traditionally will come to us, where they've got a really tangled mess of things that aren't working, and or it's breaking, it's falling apart in the middle of the day when it's most critical that it stays up. And so we will, triage it. We'll patch it and keep it up and running, but then start moving move them towards other technologies that are more standard technologies in the enterprise for a large company or for a small company. We'll introduce them to new technologies that they may not have, like SQL Server and Power BI, and then if a portion of it needs to go to the web, then we can do that also. But the first step is just to keep the patient from dying, keep the application from falling apart, and yeah.
Okay. How do you folks generate revenue then?
It's a time and material. So our first phase is an assessment where we'll, depending on the complexity of the application, it's 4 or 8 hours of paid for assessment. We'll go in and do a deep dive on the application, understand its weaknesses, maybe look at what their enhancements that they might want. And then the delivery is a much more detailed statement of work, and from which then they can then budget for. It's like, okay, is this going to be $500 or $50,000? And then they can appropriately say, okay, well, we'll do that, and we'll save the $50,000 for next quarter and something like that. So we charge hour by hour. My consultants do, and my job is to find great clients and great consultants, and I put the two together, and then we bill for the hours and keep good track of what they worked on, and then the client pays the bills, and that's how we make money.
Absolutely. So when someone is deciding between Help4Access and then another potential company, what would you say makes you folks stand out?
Our long-term commitment to building a body of knowledge around the space. So whether or not you just have one Access database, or like Albertsons had 65,000 Access databases, since we only specialize in it, we have a stronger capability than a company like most companies are web. Most they do is web. And if you try to get a web company to do an Access database, it's a different beast completely. And of the only handful of what I would call professional Access consulting companies out there, I won't name them, but there's really only about maybe not even 5, maybe 4, spread it throughout the U.S. They're good, but we focus on the client success. It's not so interesting to talk about the technology. It really hasn't changed much since 1992, but the options of where to migrate people to, or even starting at the ground at the beginning, say, should you even be building something? Taking somebody through the buy versus build decision trees is a good place to start, because if they should have bought, you don't want to do a lot of investing done in that existing piece of technology. So we treat it more like management consulting than just building, more tools.
Talk to me a little bit about the different target audiences that you folks that Help4Access is looking to reach. So you talked to more about some companies. What size companies? Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, I'll take you through our history. We started reaching very small companies, nonprofits, small startups, $2,000 budgets. Building them a full system for $2,000 is really challenging. And as our marketing has matured, we've been able to reach larger clients, and the larger clients have bigger projects. And along the way, we've been able to develop not just support new development migration services, but we also have a good capability in discovery services, meaning we can we have the ability to handle that situation like Albertsons, where they have 65,000 access databases. How do you get your hand around? You're not going to onesie twosie. You need a protocol to how to approach that. But also we've added in training. So we kind of now offer across the enterprise all of it. You need, because sometimes our support looks like training for the business. You don't want to, the CIO that says no more access databases here ever again. That person won't survive. That's not an option for most people, because there's always a gap between existing SaaS applications that are in the world and some new creative, something comes up like COVID, and then all of a sudden you need all these different kinds of database applications to now send their data, to a central repository where all COVID cases are held, wherever that might be. But so there's always some niche that needs to be filled, and Access is the best tool for fulfilling that niche.
It sounds like that a lot of what you folks do in your outreach is education, and education around your product and what Help4Access can do. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. That's in our email campaign, which is pretty extensive. There are a lot of white papers basically that will walk a client through how do you approach a situation. They're like having 65,000 access databases, divide versus build, decision tree. If you wanted to put the Microsoft Access on an iPhone, how would you do that? That's everybody wishes they could just press a button and it will happen. And it kind of can be that way if you have a very simple access application to start with. But it's more about learning how to invest, when to invest in what parts of your IT, your software, and when not to, and when to prepare to sunset something. And it's that life cycle of that IT asset that needs to kind of be taught, because in small organizations or even large organizations with small work groups, that care and feeding isn't thought about much. It's usually we just need to get to market no matter what. We'll worry about the life cycle of this later. And just as if in a very mature organization, before they would start a project, they would say, what's the budget? Who are the stakeholders? What are the use cases? They build all that first before they make a $250,000 decision. Access applications, it's after the fact. You kind of still have to go back and kind of do that. For those applications that warrant that investment, for those that don't, just throw them away. The ones that do, if they're providing business value, then it makes more sense to analyze and figure out how much do you want to invest. Because a particular business function in an organization, if it's not unique, if it's not what part of their unique value proposition, it's probably not unique, and you can almost always go buy something that doesn't make you unique. Accounting, you're not going to write a new accounting application, but if you're a medical device company and you have this really fuzzy way of putting parts together, then you're not going to go buy a $500,000 ERP system just to do this one little thing that's going to change. 3 months later. Right.
Talk to me a little bit. What was that?
Does that answer your question? I think I got off part. Okay.
Yes. So you talked a little bit about using email marketing to educate your prospective clients. What would you say besides your email? What would you say your main social media channels are that you work to reach?
Our use of social media channels has been spotty. We, of course, we have a presence on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, those, and have had mixed results in advertising. Craigslist, Facebook has got fantastic segmentation, but it's more B2C.
Yep.
And LinkedIn has got great qualified eyes, but it has been very expensive to advertise, using LinkedIn advertising. So we have presence, but we don't leverage it heavily.
Yeah. Yeah, understood. What would last question for you? What would you say what verticals do you folks serve?
So verticals like size.
Size or different types of companies too, like in different industries or.
Right. Given that we've had seriously over 800 clients over the last 15 years, 20 years, it really just happens to be what's topical. Like if I was going to write a campaign today and target somebody, would I do nonprofit, or let's see what's maybe the ACM, maybe legal, since there's so much legal stuff going on, and we've got case studies for everything. So it's just kind of what's buzzing today.
Yeah.
Pick that and run with it, and then maybe pick, depending on the audience size. Would you say West Coast? It's still a big territory.
Yeah.
Or if it's super niche, then you might want to choose the entire U.S. and hit everybody that's in that niche. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, Sasha, this has been a great conversation about management consulting. I love that term that you use, management consulting, and investing in unique solutions. I think that's fantastic. I do have one more question before you go. What is one thing, both professionally and personally, that you'd love to be celebrating in this next year?
I would love to celebrate us achieving 10 million gross revenue.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's it. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
It's been a target. We often will grow 400% in a year, and we've done it multiple years in a row. But then we'll have a down. Usually, when we pivot our marketing, we'll downturn a little bit. So we got to get to that $10 million mark.
Well, I certainly know with your business strategy and your personalized approach that it is within reach.
I appreciate that, Kelsey. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sasha, it was great having you on Business Ninjas. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely. Anytime, Kelsey. Thank you very much.